This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome everybody to WildEarth, your very own live African safari through the bush. My name is Amy, and behind the camera today we have Kat. It is a bit of an overcast morning this morning, and we are heading into the west of the reserve, still on our buffalo search. Just remember that if you are under the age of 18 and have any questions, to send your questions to kidsquestions@wildearth.tv. Otherwise, you can register on the WildEarth website and submit any questions and comments you have over there. It's a little bit chilly this morning, but definitely not as cold as the other day. Also still a little bit of a breeze in the air, but nothing too strong at the moment. So hoping that this morning, as we head west, we are going to be able to follow up on any signs of buffalo. Still wanting to find them. But we will take anything that we can get along the way as well. We are heading towards the river at the moment. Mr. Wild, you're hoping that we may run into some wild dogs? Well, me too. That would be awesome. The west is actually also a good place to look for wild dogs. Our boundary runs there on the western side, and it's always good. Maybe we'll drive that today and just have a look for any tracks of them to see if they perhaps have moved in that direction or even come in from the property on the other side. Again, at this time of the morning, especially with the overcast weather, it's still quite cool. Great for wild dogs to be moving, running, and hunting. There's also a large waterhole in the west that we like to go past as well. So I think that we are going to head in that direction and see what we can find.
Good morning and welcome to Djuma Private Game Reserve in the Sabi Sands. I'm currently on an off-road adventure, and that's because there is something waiting for me here. A beautiful cat that I've been looking for. And we'll see if we can get it. My name is Tessa. I'm going to be your guide this morning on safari here in Djuma. Behind the camera we have Morgan, and we are very, very, very excited to share a leopard with you. So this leopard is currently clinging to the topmost part of the tree, and that's because the Talamati Pride actually chased it up this tree a little while ago. So it seems like the Talamati Pride has started moving off, so possibly the leopard is going to come down. But I think it's just checking out first to see if the lions are possibly coming back. The lions have actually moved east towards the drainage line. I know they were on the dam cam last night, and they've bumped this leopard on the way on their movements. So I'm going to reposition for you, see if we can see the face, but you can see this is quite the tree to climb. And the leopard has gone as high as it can, because lions will try and climb a tree after a leopard. What an unbelievable start to the morning. So you can see it is quite windy. In fact, the whole top of the tree is moving. Yeah, this leopard is incredibly high up the tree. I agree with you. I think in the panic of trying to get away from the lions, it just went absolutely as far as it could. There was no escaping how far up it could go. Alright, so I'm going to try and move a little bit for you, see if we can get a slightly better view. So it is a young male leopard. It sounds like it might be Shasha, although we have not confirmed that yet because we haven't had a decent look. Right, so I'll give it a go here just so that you can see how it's actually holding onto the branch. And you can see, as Morgan zooms in there, have a look at how tightly it's holding on with its front paws. It's actually got its front paws wrapped around there. And it's definitely not wanting to go anywhere right now. There's the face. Right, so definitely a little bit more alert than a leopard would normally be at this time of the morning. But you can imagine this leopard's been through quite an ordeal. He's been chased up a tree by a whole pride of lions, including dark mane. Absolutely beautiful eyes, though. Safari Kitty, I agree. He does not look very comfortable up there. He chose a very, very thin branch to rest on, so you can see he does look like his body's twisted a little bit at the back just to try and stay on the branch, and he's definitely using that tail for balance. He's actually wrapped it a little bit around the other branch, just so that he kind of feels a bit more comfortable. And I can imagine, because it is windy, it can't be easy to hang on up there. James Richard, thank you so much for confirming this is Shasha, the young male leopard. I actually have not met Shasha yet, so I'm really, really excited that I get to meet him this morning. I think he's had quite an ordeal though, so he's probably not feeling the same. Wow, look at him standing. I wonder what he's looking for. Probably just checking to see that there aren't any more lions coming in. It's actually a game viewer coming in. But you can imagine that with the sounds of anything moving around him, he's going to be quite nervous. because that's going to cover up the sounds or the movements of lions possibly. So I'm actually quite excited because Tristan saw his mom Sibui the other day and I managed to meet her briefly. So I'm actually really happy that I'm getting to see a few of the different families of leopards that are around. You can see that heavy set of white underneath his eyes, just like his mom. Just below the black part. And that little nick in the top right of his ear. He's definitely on high alert this morning. I can't imagine that he would want to come down just yet. I think he's giving the lions a little bit of time to have moved, so I'll have to try and find them again later. Look how that whole tree is swaying him. That's not the camera moving, that is the tree swaying in the wind. So on such a thin branch, you've got to have really good balance to keep yourself upright. I couldn't balance like that if you paid me. And he looks like he's relaxing a little bit again. How beautiful is that silhouette with the stormy clouds in the background? Right, he is looking down towards the bottom of the tree, so possibly contemplating coming down now. I think his biggest challenge is going to be turning around on such a thin branch unless he wants to back himself back down. Alright, so I'm definitely going to spend a little bit more time with Shasha and just see what he decides to do. I think he is going to come down the tree, but hopefully I get to show that to you a little bit later.
We are still heading along the road. We have crossed over the river and are now heading west. So it is a bit of a drive to get into the area, but of course if there is anything that we see along the way, we will most definitely stop. It's a bit bumpy here. We often see giraffes in this area as well, so that's something that I'm definitely looking out for. Oh, there's some impala. We go slowly forward, see if we can get a better view of them. There we go. You can see that one on the left on top of the head are some horns, telling us that it's a male impala. And have a look at their coats. Quite fluffy this morning, and that's just them trying to keep warm. They don't have jackets that they can put on like we do. But it looks as though they have moved off a little bit further behind these thickets. So I think we are going to carry on. Yo.
The sun marches ever upwards on this glorious morning with some wispy clouds scudding their way across the sky. It was a dramatic night, full of stormy weather. And let's see what today can bring. Who knows what's out there for us this morning. Hi everyone, my name is Mike Anderson, behind the camera is BK, and this is Eco-Training's Pridelands. As you can see, the sun's just going behind some beautiful clouds there. And last night we had a bit of a thunderstorm that passed through. But this change in the seasons, this cold weather now, it was extremely hot yesterday. It was 35 degrees and a little bit windy, but today it's very windy and very cold. And last night a few drops of rain fell. I don't know, you can actually see a drop of rain right over here. A few drops of rain fell onto the ground last night or early this morning. So that hopefully is going to get lots of things starting to get active and move around into this environment, hoping to find something green to eat. You know, when rain falls, it washes the dust off all the plants. Green things now start blooming and sprouting, and who knows what we might find. I'm pretty excited. But we're going to spend the morning just around the area here of Ndlovu Dam. We might go on the other side of the dam wall. We might walk a bit north or a bit south. But essentially just sticking around. We know there's been hyenas in the camp last night. Check out their tracks and any signs of them. We know that there was a buffalo herd and elephants around. So, fingers crossed, we can find something cool. But whilst we search around this area, we'll send you over to Tessa, who's got that leopard.
Alright, so Shasha has very clumsily come down the tree. He actually nearly fell. Maybe the nerves kicked in. And he is now sitting on the fallen part of the tree. Actually looks like a fallen, pushed over by elephants part of the tree. And just kind of assessing everything around him at the moment. See those ears have not stopped moving. There's an elephant in the background calling. How absolutely beautiful is he? You can imagine for a young leopard, he's only 2 years old. That must be quite an ordeal to have a whole pride of lions come at you. And so I'm sure it's actually going to take a while for those nerves to kind of calm down a little bit, for the adrenaline to drop in levels in its body. But I'm sure he's just very grateful that there was a big enough tree close by, because if it had been an easier tree to climb, the lions might have even climbed up after him. So luckily the little section, that little branch that he was on, was quite thin. So I don't know if the lions would have made it all the way up there, but definitely possible for lions to climb a tree like this. Might just take a bit of practice. He's gonna jump down, let's watch. Tom, I absolutely agree. He is going to be on high alert for a while. You can see how nervous he is walking. The tip of his tail's moving. He is checking behind him every second or third step, just to make sure that the lions are not coming back. And now, nose to the ground, he's literally just trying to smell where they've gone. So the way that his body is facing, that's the way that they disappeared. And so that's why he's looking extra nervous, like he wants to sniff around a little bit. But absolutely incredible. We are very, very lucky to have seen that. I'm going to see if I can get around to the other side. I'm not sure where he's going to go. He is moving towards the same drainage line where the lions are or went. So you just never know where he's going to pop up. I'll give it a bash and see. It is quite thick here. So I'm thinking he might actually try and disappear into the grass and then move off in a different direction to the lions once he's just kind of made sure that they're not right here. Yeah, No, he is actually walking down towards the drainage line, trying to avoid all of the logs and trees. Don't want to destroy anything. Alright, so it's a bit of a long distance view at the moment. Oh, and he's disappearing. But just to kind of show you how he looks walking through the grass and how good that camouflage is, there you can see him walking behind the trees. And he's actually going a slightly different direction now. He's going a little bit more north than the lions did. And I really wouldn't be surprised if he's then going to go towards the drainage line and then cut off from there. I think the lions are actually on their way back towards Biffle's Hook, where all the drama happened with the Mbali male. And so Shasha is probably just trying to gather his wits about him and then move and adjust based on where the lions are going. I certainly can't imagine what my adrenaline would be like if I'd been chased up a tree by a lion, let alone 9 lions. It would be quite something to deal with. Right, so he is disappearing quite fast. We are going to keep up with him until he gets to the drainage line. There are some other vehicles around the area, so that's helpful for me. Right, I don't know if we'll get a clear view of him walking there, but I think we will. He's actually he's paused momentarily there, and you can see he's still sniffing the ground and walking as he goes. Alright, so I'm going to try and keep up with Shasha for a bit. I'm going to send you over to Amy, who has a very tall animal for you.
Yeah,
we have indeed found ourselves some giraffes this morning. Just standing here quite close to the road, enjoying some breakfast as they begin to feed. Do you see how quickly lifted its head and turned to the right? I think it just heard something there. Now flicking back its right ear, listening to my voice, I think. On the left. Oh, now it's looking straight at us here. Very inquisitive creatures. Always making sure that they know what's going on around them. Can just see how actually it doesn't look like there's very much on that tree, but I think there are some small little green leaves that are shooting out of that tree, even though it looks like it's fallen over. But there is something growing there. Oh. It must be tasty if they're choosing to continue to feed. Oh, you can just see how its lips are wrapping around the leaves there. You can see the bird on the right. It's a fork-tailed drongo, like I was mentioning the other day. Things like starlings, drongos, even sometimes hornbills, will follow these animals like giraffes or impala through the veld. There's a Michelle, you are wanting to know how often giraffes feed in a day. Well, quite honestly, they feed all day. They are constantly out here. Well, let's just not say they feed all day, but they do in a process of eating. So they will eat and then they eat for, I would say, majority of the day. And then they will ruminate. So just like impalas or buffalo, they need to re-chew that food. So they'll spend a few hours doing that in a day as well. And then they'll also rest at times. They don't really fall asleep like we think. So they don't really spend maybe an hour a day resting, doing nothing as such. And then the rest of the time, the other 23 hours of the day, they are feeding, moving, and ruminating. One on the left seems to have heard something towards the right now. Laura, you want to know if giraffes ever strip bark like elephants do? It's a good question. I haven't seen them do that, no. The advantage that elephants have are their tusks, which allow them to actually have the strength and the leverage to be able to strip the bark off a tree. Whereas giraffes don't have those extra appendages, which would help them to be able to do that. So from what I've seen and the way giraffes feed, they stick to the leaves of trees. Sometimes you do see them chewing something like a bone, and that's just for some extra calcium and phosphorus that they need to supplement their diet. But stripping bark off trees, no, I haven't seen them do that. I love just looking at giraffes, admiring their patterns. In this one you can see along the neck all the different shapes, and each giraffe is unique, just like a zebra's stripes, as to the pattern of the spots that are on them. Looks as though giraffe is starting to move off. So I think from here we'll just see if this other giraffe also decides to move along. And we'll stay here for a few more minutes.
As WildEarth has shown, a guide is critical to your enjoyment when on safari. Safari Guide of the Year is an annual event which creates awareness for these men and women who dedicate their lives to tourism and wildlife. WildEarth fully supports this initiative that gives more credit to a profession that drives our economy and flies South African flags higher than most. In the lead up to our live award ceremony, where the Safari Guide of the Year 2021 will be crowned, we are inviting all our viewers to join us for a special fireside chat. Open to everyone, this unique event invites some of the top guides in the country to Djuma on the 26th of September, straight after the Sunset Safari.
Being nominated to the top 5 and finally being here, for me, it's an achievement. Tracks, I believe I did quite well, and the walk.
And sometimes you often drag their feet forward.
The storytelling as well. So yeah, I think that's where I see my strongest point.
And then, that was the opportunity of the scrapping.
I say the bedding and the call, definitely, for me, it was quite a big challenge. Guiding is not all about the award that we have had, but sharing the experience and continue to do what we have passion and love.
Something very, very interesting. I didn't plan this, but this is a scene rarely seen. This is what we call a journey of giraffe. So beautiful.
Tune into WildEarth every single day. It's in your nature.
Welcome back. I am still bumbling off the road at the moment, just trying to find him. He's crossed the drainage line, so we've had to come around because it is quite a steep drainage line, and we're just trying to see if we can find him again. Last we saw him, he was still walking through. It's such a thick area, you can imagine, with a lot of trees around, a lot of fallen trees as well, which I've got to be careful of. And so we're just trying to see where he may have gone. You can imagine it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack at this point, especially because he's nervous. Tom, so this is Sibuyi's son. He's only 2 years old, but he should be independent by this age. I haven't seen him with Sibuyi. I haven't heard of an interaction between them in a while. So it definitely could be that he's now become independent. I know he's had a few run-ins with Lalamba, which he's handled very well. And so that would tell me that he is independent. He's certainly big enough to be independent.
Can you see him?
No. No, I can't see him. Alright, so it looks like we found him. Well, Fun has found him actually, one of the other rangers. So we're kind of all a little bit spread out at the moment, trying to find a spot where we can get a glimpse of him. He might be going back up. Let's have a look. Alright, he definitely might be going back up somewhere. This is when you really, really, really love Wendy. She's so small. There he is. Alright, going back a little bit. Alright, so he's just resting, it seems. Sorry, Wendy's going to move a little. Just resting. And that's actually quite surprising to me because this is the exact same drainage line that the lions have just crossed after chasing him. He's crossed the same drainage line going in the same direction and then stopped next to a thicket. That being said, though, there are many tall trees here, so if he were to be surprised, I think he would very easily climb one again. Luke, lions would definitely kill a leopard. All of the predators don't really tolerate each other, so of course they're going to cross territories, they're going to be in each other's space sometimes. And what happens then is, if they do have an interaction like this morning, if they had caught Shasha while he was climbing up the tree, or managed to climb up after him, or actually got him to a point where he couldn't climb a tree and cornered him, they definitely would have tried to kill him.
What is he doing?
Definitely would have tried to kill him. So it happens a lot. Hyenas will kill leopards, they'll kill leopard cubs. Leopards will kill hyena cubs and lion cubs. Lions will kill pretty much everybody and everybody's cubs. So it's all part of competition out here. If you're all predators and you're all feeding on similar things, and you're all trying to make sure that you survive, then at some point animals will end up being killed by each other. It's not the most pleasant thing to see when predators kill each other or even attack each other, because it's a very noisy affair and it's usually very, very aggressive and quite violent. But luckily Shasha found a tree this morning. Otherwise we might have arrived to something very different. James, yes, he does have a very handsome face. I'm very impressed to be meeting him for the first time. I'm very happy that I got to meet him after a close escape. He's actually, I think he's quite big. To me, he seems quite big for a 2-year-old leopard. You can see he's still being very careful with those ears up. Just listening out. Alright, so while we continue watching Shasha in these thickets, let's have a look at an upcoming penguin show that is coming soon to WildEarth.
We have just been watching these wildebeest migrate from the southern to the northern side of the road. And now back again. Wildebeest are quite common on Ngala, but we don't often see big herds of them. There actually were some more that have moved off already into the thickets just to the right of these animals. But nice to see this morning a herd like this starting to move. They haven't started feeding yet. It looked like they were on their way to somewhere. Now, I'm not too sure if they want to head to the right or to the left. Do you notice how all of these, oh, look at them standing now. Just in a row. The others look like they're also coming across. You notice the one on the right is a little bit further from the ones on the left, so that's sort of a smaller herd that stick together of females that you're looking at there with their calves. And then just on the right, following behind, is actually a male wildebeest. You can tell that firstly just by his size. So it's not that one, the one that's coming afterwards. That will be a female. Also quite round bellies. I know Tess was mentioning the other day about the impalas that I have quite round bellies at the moment. Are going to be giving birth in the next six weeks or so. But these wildebeest, a few of them also have some really round bellies at this time of the year. And there comes the male I was talking about. So just based on his size, but then also look on his tummy, he's got a little bit of a belly button. And that tells us that he is the male of this group and is just sort of herding this herd in the direction that he wants them to go. Following behind, making sure they all stay together. Well, it looks like these wildebeest are carrying on, heading further into the bush on our left. So I think from here we are going to carry on along the road and make our way closer towards that large waterhole called Alfred Dam. I did see some zebra as well crossing the road a little while earlier, so as we drive towards there I'll also be checking to see if we can get a view of them. Carry on down the road. Like I was saying, it doesn't look like those zebras are anywhere to be seen anymore in this area, but maybe around the waterhole there'll be a few more that we can try and find.
So what I'm doing right now is searching amongst this undergrowth for any signs of living things that are lying dormant, looking for shelter, waiting for that rain to fall, the temperature to warm up. And so I'm using my stick because I don't want to. I'm using my stick because I don't want to stick my hand in amongst these grasses where there could be something like a snake curled up or some other biting thing. So it's really one of the most interesting things you can do as a guide or as anyone who's enthusiastic about nature is to start focusing on the small stuff. Get into the undergrowth and really see what might be alive around. I mean, for example, Bika, come have a look at this stuff here. I don't know how easy it will be for you to show this green stuff over here, but it's starting to come alive. The whole time during the winter, this stuff was dormant and very, very grey and lifeless. But now, with a few drops of rain starting to come out, we're starting to see the lichen on these trees starting to become very green and fluffy. I mean, oh, look up here. Look at this one over here. There's 3 different colours. There's 4 different colours. There's green lichen, blue lichen, orange lichen, and black lichen over there. And lichen is basically fungus and algae working together to create a microhabitat. So the algae is producing energy from sunlight, and the fungus is creating a habitat that the algae can live on that's slightly moist, it has moisture inside, and it doesn't die then, and they work together to create life. It's called mutual obligate symbiosis. Without each other, they could not survive. And I always think it's very interesting to see all the different forms and shapes that this stuff can have. And that's when it gets important to start looking at the small stuff, the undergrowth. When it's still very cold or dry, like this time of year, you have to start looking at the small stuff. And then you realize there's life absolutely everywhere.
All right, welcome back to the Shasha male leopard. He is giving us quite a challenge this morning, crossing backwards and forwards over the drainage line and hiding very, very well. So you can see he is still very nervous. Pinnakin, yes, in the Sabi Sands there is an incredibly high density of leopards, and the population is constantly growing. There are constantly females having cubs. There's no destruction of habitat or anything happening here to limit the growth of leopards. The only difference would be if they are, being predated on by things like lions or hyenas. But at the moment the population is still going strong. It's one of the highest densities in the world, if not the highest density of leopards. He's trying very hard to hide from us today. And you can imagine he's hiding from everything today. He wants to make absolutely sure that he's not going to get eaten by the lions. And he's still trying to figure out where they've gone. So you can see the drainage line on my right. The lions crossed over and then crossed back kind of southeast. And so he's been doing one of these where he's crossing the drainage line backwards and forwards, stopping on both sides and just kind of reevaluating where he should go next. But he seems to be moving quite consistently. He'll only stop for very, very brief periods, and that's very typical for a leopard. While he's still gathering information, he's going to be stopping, he's going to pick up the information he wants to know, and then he's going to move again. I'm pretty sure, he's crossing the drainage line again. All right, I'm actually going to reverse you. Probably going to sound silly, but there is a gap back here, so let's have a look. See if I can come down towards the bank. Find a gap in here. See him from here. So there's quite a dip, so I can't keep going forwards. But there is quite a dip in front of me. Yeah, there I can see him, alright. So I'm going to sit here for a while and we're going to reposition as soon as we can, but there's a very big spike thorn thicket in front of me. He's just disappeared behind it and he's going to come out the other side, I'm hoping. Unless he decides to change direction all over again and move backwards. But he's currently just behind that thicket. And I think he's probably stopped to reevaluate where he wants to go again. So it makes a lot of sense for him to be zigzagging, not moving in one steady direction. Because when you zigzag, you're throwing off any predictability. Come on, boy. Where'd you go? So he might have actually stopped in that thicket. There you can see him coming out the right-hand side. He's just about to cross into the sand. Daniel, you're in Scotland. Thank you so much for your question. So we were actually just discussing that, myself and Morgan. Shasha doesn't actually have a meaning that we know of. I might be wrong, but from the information that we know, Shasha doesn't actually have a written meaning here. So I'm not sure why they called him Shasha. Right, so I'm not going to be able to cross this drainage line to follow him, so we're just going to have to watch him disappear for now. And then possibly have to go back around and try again from the other side. But definitely incredible just to see how quickly he disappears and how easily, just because he's standing still, you lose where he is. I mean, look at that, you can barely see him and you only notice it because of the movement. But when he's still, it's almost impossible to see what he's doing or where he is. I feel so lucky to have met Shasha this morning. That's leopard number 7 for me, with Tristan's most recent list of the ones that I could see. I've got 23 to go. But I feel quite happy that I met him and his mother now. You can definitely see the similarities between them, especially around their eyes. You can see it's the perfect weather for him to still be moving. Still quite a strong wind. Overcast. Cold enough for me to be in 3 layers. So it's definitely fitting that him and the lions have been out and about this morning, and that he is still moving. So 50, I hope so as well. It wouldn't be very nice to see him have another run-in with the Pride of Lions. So I'm hoping that he can avoid them from the direction he's going, and he's actually going northeast at the moment, and the lions turned southeast. So hopefully they haven't done a loop back towards the north, but it seems like they are going in different directions now, which is great. Definitely wouldn't be a fun morning for him to have 2 close run-ins in a row. And I think where he was up in that tree in the beginning was very, very precarious, very difficult to balance. So that's definitely something that he probably doesn't want to repeat anytime soon. So I think it is going to be very, very difficult to find him again. I know 1 or 2 of the vehicles are heading around that side. But I think what I'll do, I'll actually leave him to carry on with his morning and then kind of see what else I can find. But I'm going to send you over to Mike to see what he has on Bushwalk.
Absolutely love flowers, and just found this tiny tree with this beautiful pincushion-like flower. Now it's very, very windy, so the flower is moving around quite a lot. But this little flower is from what I believe is a shepherd's tree, and I think it's Boskia albitronca, although I'm still in the process of trying to identify it because it's a very, very small little bush. As you can see now, I'm kind of crouched next to it, and it's really, really tiny. But in any case, if this is a shepherd's tree, then it's a wonderful little tree that they sometimes call the tree of life, because it has incredible amount of uses, not least of which is the fact that it's evergreen, and so it does create shade in areas that are very dry. It's extremely drought tolerant, so it can survive in the driest of environments. And now it has these tiny little leaves, which make it also quite resistant to desiccation or drying out. And the flower that's flowering right now is really, really fragrant. I can't really explain how it smells. I'm trying to think if I could explain it. Maybe a little bit like jasmine? I don't know, no, not really. But anyway, there's not very many of the flowers on it at the moment. More might start to bloom soon. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 flowers. They've got these tiny little pincushion-like projections. And this just means simply that when flies and other creatures like moths are attracted to it, and bees, they walk over it, they get the pollen on themselves, and they fly over to the next one, and the pollen will be then deposited on them. We'll try and see if we can find a larger example of a shepherd's tree. It's not heavily browsed, but I know where there's a really cool one not so far from the camp, so we'll try and show you. But I also believe that you can make a coffee substitute from this tree. I think actually potentially from the roots. I'll have to find out for you. We'll show you another shepherd's tree, and I'll make sure that I do a little bit of digging, because I know that this tree has got so many cool uses. And this is a tiny one, and you can see it's actually been damaged by elephants quite heavily, because you can see the ends of almost every branch have been snapped off, and that's not something that you would see from, let's say, an impala or a kudu that was feeding on it. There would be nice, neat clippings, but these have been snapped off in some places, like you can see there. And that's very typical of elephants when they come through this area feeding. In fact, that's not the only bit of elephant damage we can see. On this, what looks like a false marula that's next to me, you can see over here as well, this big piece of the wood that's exposed. That's from an elephant. Anna Marie, it's a wonderful little flower, and it's not the only tree which has these flowers. I showed you also yesterday, if you were watching, Anna Marie, we showed you a woolly caper bush, which also has pincushion flowers just like this. In fact, I thought this was a woolly caper bush when I first got here, because I just saw the flower, but the leaf is very different, and woolly caper bushes are covered in hooked thorns that you can hardly see, whereas a shepherd's tree is completely armor-less. It doesn't have much of a defense mechanism, except for the fact that it usually grows with a very high canopy. So right now it gets fed on quite a lot, but once it's large, it's very difficult for many animals to get to it.
Civilized to just found some black rhino tracks. A mother with a calf. The calf tracks are so small. They're somewhere here in this area, but it's too dense to walk this way. So we're gonna walk around where it's not so dense. Let's hope we get lucky.
And sometimes you often drag their feet forward and deposit the scent mark, which is what they use to patrol their territory.
We managed to get a glimpse of the black rhino, but for safety reasons, of course, we held back and we walked a different way, but it was such a fantastic experience. We didn't just focus on the big things, because it's not all about the big things. We focused on army ants and lots of dung. Civilized did an incredible job, but it's up to the judges now.
This is a battle of two great carnivores of the African wilderness. Whew. Whoa! You don't want to be under those jaws. Definitely, this round goes to the lion. Look at that. Fantastic.
Expect the unexpected here on WildEarth daily.
The bushwalk feed allows the camera person some creative license. This is my favorite style of shooting. You have to be mentally and physically prepared. You're shooting handheld in some very strange and contorted positions, always with a straight back often in the squat position, low to the ground. The creativity comes down to the relationship and sync you have with your presenter. The more you understand each other, the more you'll be able to tell the story seamlessly.
So I'm still bumbling along. I'm actually coming towards the east, and then I've started turning south again. The drainage line where all of the action happened and the lines crossed is on my right hand side, and the lines were coming kind of southeast from there, so kind of towards that direction. So I just want to see where more or less they've crossed and where they might have gone to. I've left Shasha, or more like Shasha left us, and we've decided to see if we can find the lions. I would be very, very, very interested to see how far they've gone, but also what else might be around, considering there have been lions and a leopard here this morning. I can imagine a lot of animals might be nervous because of all the activity. They can smell the lions. They might have heard some commotion too. So I'm just taking it really slowly, having a look to see if there is any movement, lion tails flicking, lion ears flicking, alarm calling. I haven't seen any tracks on the road here yet, so they might have cut further south. What an exciting morning to have already. I do see an elephant. Elephants. It's quite exciting. This is actually not very far as the crow flies from where all the drama happened, so I'm surprised the elephants are still around. Let's have a look. It's quite a tough view. Morgan, do you think we'll get better from further on? Not really. Alright, let me reverse a smidgen and have a look at this young elephant. He's in quite a tough spot. There's a lot of thicket in between that elephant and the road. And it looks like there are a few here from maybe a small breeding herd. The others are already quite far into the distance. And these are probably the elephants we heard calling while we were with Shasha when he was still up the tree. They were trumpeting a little, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were trumpeting because they had heard or seen the lions. Because the lions may have come straight past here. You can see this elephant doesn't look stressed at all. It's still very relaxed, feeding, carrying on as usual. Using its foot to help it dig up some grass. You can also hear the wind is picking up substantially now, which means the lions are probably still moving as well. So I'm just taking this opportunity just to listen for any alarm calls or anything unusual while we watch this elephant, because that might be the best indication for me of where the lions have gone if they are in the middle of a block and haven't crossed any further roads. So the road that I'm on actually comes out on our eastern cut line, so I would assume that's where the lions are going. Michelle, it's lovely to spend time with elephants. There's always something going on when you watch an elephant, thanks to the fact that they are constantly feeding and moving around, and especially younger ones, because they're still kind of learning their confidence and practicing doing all the different things that an adult elephant would do. I know it's not the best view of this little one at the moment, but I don't want to go off the road. I'd rather just stay here and see as it moves. And the rest of the herd looks like they are coming closer slowly as well. That was amazing. It actually just picked up a stick and moved it out of the way so that it could eat the grass underneath. Neil, elephant and lion interactions are quite interesting. With a big pride of lions, if there's a very young elephant, they might actually try and hunt it. And so you can imagine elephants always see lions as a threat. So as soon as elephants notice lions close by, a lot of the time what happens is the older elephants in particular might actually go towards the lions and chase them off. There'll be a lot of trumpeting, head shaking, ears straight out to make themselves look bigger, and they'll actually try and chase the lions off, because if they unsettle the lions should leave the area. So if they kind of bother them enough, it's very similar to a fork-tailed drongo that, like the other day, some fork-tailed drongos were harassing Mareebs and he moved. It's a very similar concept. However, it has happened that lions have killed elephants and lions have harassed elephants. So there's a few different ways that it could go. If the lions decide that it's a worthwhile opportunity, they will actually hunt the elephant. They'll have to work very well as a team because elephants are very big and very strong. But most of the time what would happen is there would be a lot of trumpeting, a lot of head shaking, and the elephants would try and chase the lions off. You'd see very obvious behavior that the elephants are unhappy. Lifted heads, ears straight out, and heads shaking, and you'll often even see their tails come up as they're chasing the lions. But it's usually quite a noisy affair, and you'll see the lions slip away quite quickly, looking very nervous. But animal behavior and interactions is definitely one of my favorite topics. You always see very interesting things happening when you have interactions between herbivores and predators. And you would think something as big as an elephant wouldn't really have to be nervous of a lion, but they definitely do have to be nervous. Because even an elephant of this size is vulnerable to a big pride of lions. And you can imagine if this is part of a herd and there's even smaller calves, those calves are even more at risk. Let's just have another listen. The wind has picked up even more. It feels like almost a gale force wind at the moment. You can see the trees moving. Let's have a listen and see what else we might be able to hear. So I haven't heard any alarm calls or anything like that. It is quite windy, so it might not travel in this direction if they are in a place where the wind is maybe opposite to me. But I'm going to try and move a little bit, see if we can get a better view of this elephant and see where the rest of the herd is gone as well. You never know. Just see the rest of the herd in the distance. Right, it's going to unfortunately be a view of the back of the elephant, but that's okay for now. Right, and it's just a youngish teen that wants to move off towards the rest of the herd slowly. Alright, so I'm going to leave this youngster to move back towards its mom, and it looks like a younger sibling way in the distance. And I'm going to carry on towards the eastern boundary cheetah cut line, see if I can find any tracks of the Talamati Pride.
Well, we are bumbling through the west of Ngala at the moment. We made our way to that waterhole and found some zebras that I was speaking about earlier, but unfortunately the signal was not very good, so we had to leave there. And we are also actually currently heading down just through a drainage line, so I hope we don't lose you. An area with a little bit thicker vegetation as we go through the small, also some bumps here. What we're going to do from here is actually just carry on up the road and heading a little bit further north, and then come around and maybe go past another smaller waterhole that's a little bit further in the central area. Otherwise, if there's no luck around there, I'll head back to the central parts and see what animals we can find around there. Again, today it's quite windy. Animals are a little bit more nervous, spending their time in some thicker bush. But that's not to say we won't find them. We are going to do our very best for you this morning. Hopefully we'll get lucky.
We went on an adventure to find a shepherd's tree, and we did find a shepherd's tree, but we found something else even cooler. Just in this little shepherd's tree, we found a tiny frog. A tiny cool little frog. And that little frog, that little dude over there, is what I believe is a southern foam nest frog, which is my favorite type of frog. And it is perfectly camouflaged. Look at that perfect camouflage. It's exactly the same colors and patterns as this tree itself. Nature is the most spectacular thing I can imagine. I can't imagine something can be so perfect like this. So this tiny little foam nest frog has found its way into a small hole in this shepherd's tree and has slowly changed its colors to remain completely camouflaged. I almost was going to stick my stick in there to try and see how deep this little hole was, and then I just stopped myself because this little cool dude was in there, and it's tucked its legs in, it's tucked its hand around its body, and it stays completely still in order to conserve moisture, to keep its body hydrated until the rains fall. And it's very small, so this is a first-year foam nest frog, I'd say, or maybe even a one-season foam nest frog. They can live for a couple of years, I'm sure. But this one is tiny. It's about the size of a thumb, maybe smaller than a thumb. And they can get, big enough to fit in the palm of your hand. How awesome is that little thing? It's very windy.
Yeah.
It's pushing me.
Eddie, sorry about the camera is shaking. The wind is basically about to blow BK off of his feet. Eddie, this frog is not poisonous, no. I mean, it's relying on camouflage and to stay very still, and it's a good strong jumper as well, so it can escape from danger. But no, something like a banded rubber frog, which is black with red markings, that kind of a frog is very toxic and poisonous because it doesn't want camouflage. It wants to be seen and to warn predators, don't even try it because I will get you. Whereas this one, as you can see, hides in this little nook, camouflaged perfectly, so no, it's not toxic. And this one would be a delicious meal for so many things, from birds of prey to snakes to small hunting mammals. It will literally get snapped up by almost anything, so it needs to remain very, very still. That's why I'm not touching it. I wouldn't try and remove it. It's too dry and it's too cold today. It would really suffer and would dry out. Oh, Lisa, that is a great question, and someone who would be a frog expert would know much better than I if there was a way to tell a female foam nest frog. I generally think that frog females are larger than frog males, especially if you see these type of frogs, the southern foam nest frog or grey foam nest frog. They will have one female on a branch who then calls, and then a multitude of much smaller males arrive on the scene. And the name foam nest comes from the fact that the female starts releasing eggs, the males release sperm, and then together they all rub their legs together and release more of this fluid, and it creates this huge foam nest that then hardens on the outside. That's where the name foam nest comes from. So that'll be about the only time I could tell if it was a female, is if we had that beautiful foam nest mating scenario happening. Then you can tell males are the ones that are clambering all over her, and she would be the one that was just in the middle, just releasing her eggs, just, you know, trying to mind her own business, basically. How incredible. So perfect. I used to have one that used to hang out with me all the time when I was a guide working in the Sabi Sands. It used to just come and hop onto my bedside table because I had a lamp that attracted bugs, and it was my little friend. This one here, I'm going to leave it just where it is. I'm not going to disturb it anymore, and we'll send you off to one of the other feeds to see what else is going on.
Welcome back. How exciting that Mike had a foam nest frog. I love those. They are so well camouflaged. Very cute to look at for a frog. So I'm on a little bumble. I'm now on the eastern boundary. I'm actually just about on the southeastern corner of Djuma. And I'm looking for tracks of those lions. I think they turned further south and east because there's been nothing crossing out this way. I think they've actually crossed out south. It's definitely worth checking anyway. And I'm actually going to work my way back towards Twin Dams, see if there's anything there, because that is pretty much en route for them, the direction that they were going. Lots of hyena tracks, steenbok tracks. Catherine, I agree. It is lovely to see some greenery on the trees around us, especially in the fire breaks. It's definitely a change of season happening, and some very ominous weather coming up as well. It's a bit strange that we've had so much wind in the last kind of week, 10 days. Also very strange that it's bringing quite a lot of rain. I'm very grateful for the rain though. But it is probably one of the best times of the year to see the bush, just because, you know, there is always just so much happening when there's a change of season. Flowers starting to bloom, trees starting to get their new shoots and leaves. Absolutely amazing. Alright, we have got some other vehicles also looking for the lions. So I'm definitely going to head towards Twin Dams. It'll be very interesting to see where the lions have actually popped up. I think they're probably going to end up moving quite far today. That's because of the weather. When the weather is so nice and cool, you'll find that the predators will move a lot further. This area is particularly good to check thoroughly for predators because of all of the little, I'll call them gullies, but little valleys on the side of the roads. And we're going over crests and into dips. Great place for them to be moving. So where I am now is actually where Sabi was the other day, and that's Shasha's mom. And so from here to where Shasha was this morning is not actually very far. I'd say maybe 2 kilometers as the crow flies. So he's definitely still in the same area. I'm just imagining how amazing it would be to have, you know, kind of come around a corner and just have all the talamati flying around. So what I've been doing as I've been kind of going along in the last week or so that I've been here is kind of marking off the different points where I've seen all of the predators for myself. It's very interesting to see how they're moving and overlapping. Mike, so the S8 male or the Mbali male, there have been no recent updates on him, so none in the last 2 days or so. About a day or two after the incident happened where he chased the Talamatis and dark mane, he was seen with one of the Talamati lionesses almost straight back at the buffalo kill site. So that's something that definitely is interesting because we haven't seen him since then. Right. Alright, so it doesn't look like there's much at the dam at the moment. We are going to keep going, other than just some more aquatic beetles hanging out.
My name is Nomfundo Ndlovu and I'm the Senior Project Manager for the WISA Schools and Youth Unit. I'm a qualified horticulturalist. I'm particularly passionate about supporting schools towards working through their sustainability journey and towards food sovereignty throughout food gardening projects. A typical day in my work involves me overseeing our national projects and creating an enabling environment for schools to thrive and succeed in working towards self-reliance and sustainability, and really ensuring that no school gets left behind.
We're in the center of the reserve. It's a much more open area, so a completely different experience. It's also in the afternoon, so just a little bit hot, shall we say. We're following some lion tracks, and then we found the scat of a lion cub. So we didn't see the lions, but we decided to leave the area. It was getting a bit too dense and a bit too thick. So we've come all the way down to the water hole to have a little break, and then we're going to keep walking and see what else we can find. And TJ himself actually reminded us at the start of the walk that when you're on the vehicle, it's all about observing. But when you're on a walk, it's all about immersing yourself in nature, being part of the ecosystem. And that's exactly what happened today.
Looks like it's a very difficult climb because every time it tries to climb, the ground is breaking, so it slides down. But it's the only one. Look at that. That is the call of desperation with a cub. It's like, what are you doing, mommy? Oops! Oof!
Expect the unexpected here on WildEarth daily.
I said I would find us a larger and more impressive and more iconic version of a shepherd's tree, and I have found one. I mean, it was easy because I knew where it was anyway. This that I'm standing under is a shepherd's tree. Now, you saw the flowers and that small version. This is what they look like when they're fully grown. And this is a beautiful example. Look how high those first branches are above my head. It's well protected from overgrazing by animals like impala or kudu that would otherwise strip this thing bare. The small leaves and these spine-like branches also helping to maybe give it a small bit of protection. And very drought resistant. That's why it has those tiny, tiny leaves. Not too much moisture lost from them. And as I was saying before, in many places, it's often referred to as the tree of life or as a tree of life because it has so many uses, not least of which, as I mentioned before, is that it creates this nice canopy. Although it's still growing right now, this leaves are being replenished. But if you were living in a very dry area, prone to drought or a desert, these trees still grow there because they're so slow growing and very drought resistant. And this would be the only place for shelter for a shepherd with his sheep, or bushmen, for example, in the old days when they were living a very nomadic lifestyle, hunter-gathering. Now, the tree itself has loads of uses. First of all, it's a valuable fodder tree. And the flowers that we saw attract so many insects, which means it's lots of bird life around it. And the fruits are edible. They can be eaten fresh, or they can be, fermented and turned into a type of a beer. They can be brewed. The flower buds, before the flower is actually growing yet, the flower buds can be pickled and turned into capers. So far there's so many different uses. And probably most importantly, it can be a coffee substitute. And that's quite interesting. Normally coffee substitutes are made from the beans of a tree, but not this tree. You simply cut off some of the branches, you burn them and sun dry them. First you sun dry them, then you burn them, you add sugar, like a bit of brown sugar, into a pot. You cook it up until it's nicely browned and toasted, then you pound it and grind it into a powder, and you can mix that with water, and it's used as a very good coffee substitute. It's quite labor intensive, but if you haven't had coffee for a while, I bet you would do the same. You go through almost any lengths. But it's not really the most important use, let's be honest. I mean, most people, if you're in a survival situation, coffee is not what you're thinking of. But if you look at this tree where we were looking at the frog earlier, it's just in there. Sorry, the wind is very strong. I hope you can hear me. Just in there is the frog. This is a small tree, but when they're much larger, these holes extend almost all the way through the trunk of the tree. And in dry areas, when it does rain, the rain runs down the side of the tree and into a hole like this and then accumulates in the trunk where it is stored. It is not lost. It can't evaporate from in there very easily. And the wood is very tough and hard. It doesn't absorb that water. So bushmen would know where these big trees are with these holes. Incidentally, in Afrikaans, this tree is known as a witgat, which means a white hole, because it's white, the trunk, and it's got holes, the gat part. So the bushmen would know where there was big trees like this. Then they would come, they would, sniff inside, or maybe like dip a stick or something inside the hole, and they would see, okay, there's water in there. Then they will cut a small hole somewhere and collect the water out to be able to drink that water then in a very dry area. They would probably have used the gum of some sort of another tree, of sap, or maybe even clay mud, to then stop that hole up so it can capture that water again next year. It's a good question. Jackson, that's a great question. So this tree does grow extremely slowly because it's usually growing in very dry and arid areas. Trees that grow in dry areas tend to take a long time to grow. I don't know exactly how long this tree can live, but I'm sure it's in the space of probably a couple of 100 years. This one over here is already quite old. In this area that we're living in now, in sort of the low veld, just the western edge of the Kruger Park, we get a fair amount of rain, probably anywhere between 400 to 600 mils is the average rainfall per year. But in other areas where this grows, like the Kalahari Desert, for example, the western part of the country, they might receive as little as 25 mils or 50 mils in a year, which is so small. So this tree can still survive, and there it'll grow even slower than it grows here. I wonder how old this tree is. I really wonder. It could be 100 years old already. I think they would probably grow a bit larger here than they would grow in other places because of the slightly better rainfall that we get. But what an awesome tree. There was another use that I had remembered, but I've kind of lost it now. I'll think about it, I'm sure, as we go. Anyway, it's easy to identify. Small leaves, high crown, with the white trunk like that. It can be no other. Boskia albitrunca. And the albi part, albitrunca. The albi stands for, to be pale, and the trunca part is the trunk of the tree. Okay. But I want to show you something else. We've been talking about how it's very dry at this time of year, but there is life around. Check out these beautiful flowers over here. These are the flowers of what looks like a knobthorn. In fact, it is a knobthorn. And these flowers are known as catkins. Catkin just meaning simply that it's very long and thin like that, not like some of the other X-acacias, which have little round pom-pom flowers. Okay? And this tree has been pushed over by an elephant, but it's still able to produce some flowers and some leaves. It's never going to thrive as it once did, but I mean, just have a look from the flowers that are there, gorgeous looking little fluffy flowers. If you come straight down, BK, just to there, you'll see beautiful, beautiful little leaf shoots starting to come out. So even though it's been pushed over by an elephant, it is still creating life. It's still able to eke out an existence. It's never going to be thriving, but it's still going to live. And it's creating a little sheltered patch. It's full of thorns, so animals can't get underneath here to this grass. So it will also create new life underneath it. Well, we're going to head off now and see what else we can find. It's been an absolutely fabulous morning so far. But we'll send you over to Amy, who's also on the move.
Well, hello. Fat and myself are currently being blown away in the bush this morning. It is very windy, and I'm just having to hold my cap as well to make sure that it stays in place. Otherwise, I'm going to lose it. But we've had to leave the western side of Ngala this morning just because the signal is not doing very well there. And we are currently making our way back into the central parts towards the Timbavati River. We saw some giraffes, some zebras, some impala on the way, but no animal is really sticking around for us too long. We sort of see them and then they move off into the bush. I think the wind is definitely affecting their behavior. We discussed that yesterday as well, about how the animals feel a lot more nervous just with all this noise around them, and they tend to stick to the thicker bush. But I'm hoping that as we get closer towards the river, that with a thicker vegetation around there, that some of the animals will be a little bit more relaxed, and the ones that we do find do stick around for us to show you. Luke, you want to know about how many water sources we have in the area? Oh, that sunshine is coming out now. It's very nice. So we have two bigger water holes, one smaller one, and then a few pan systems that are around as well. The other day we showed you an elephant drinking at a smaller bit of water. I think on the first morning, one of my first morning drives, we went to a smaller water hole as well down in the south, so there are 3 of those. So I would say maybe 10 different water sources that we can sort of visit, but then there probably are some more little pans, especially in the summertime. So it's variable. The amount varies probably throughout the year because of the rain. So right now we have 3 main water holes that we can visit regularly that sort of have water all year round, and then there are some pans as well that hold their water throughout the year. And then as the rains start to come in the summertime, so those water sources increase, and some of the smaller pans that have dried up actually get water back in them, and so then we get more water sources available for the animals. Thanks, Luke. That was a nice question. So as we continue to bumble here towards the river, let's take a look at an upcoming prize that you can win at Eco Training Pridelands.
If you are a WildEarth explorer, then we are excited to announce that there is another unique prize for you to win. Sign up to be an explorer before the 16th of October 2021, and you and a friend could be heading off to an Eco Training Ranger experience. This 2-night opportunity offers a living and learning adventure where you will combine seeing incredible nature with gaining knowledge on how animals live in the wild. You will approach dangerous game on foot, learn how to track, do some 4x4 driving, and have an exclusive opportunity to join the WildEarth team behind the scenes on the live show. After each action-packed day, you will relax around the campfire and listen to the nighttime choir of animal sounds before you drift off to sleep. WildEarth explorers, it's in your nature.
Please come and join us here at Pridelands. We'd love to have you, so don't forget to sign up and win that prize. You might get to get up and close and personal with these little dudes. So these ants here are called cocktail ants because of their habit when they feel threatened of cocking their tail up, and they can spray a type of a formic acid, which is very uncomfortable. No one likes that very much, so we're not trying to disturb them, but we are wanting to find out what they're actually doing. These ants are all over this knobthorn wherever there are fresh green shoots coming out. Now, normally, ants like this would be tending to aphids or small little insects that are tapping into the sap of the tree and creating a sugary substance as a byproduct, as an excretion that the ants then drink. It's very high energy, sweet stuff. But these ants look like they're actually trying to get to the sap themselves. I cannot see any aphids amongst these ants. So it might simply be that where the tree is growing, there are some fluids coming out. I don't know, BK, are you able to see any like little aphid things there? Doesn't look like it. No, but it's like a little green insect, usually an aphid. So, but I don't see any of those. That's so cool, though. They're just crowded around here. But if you bother them, they have the ability to, yes, cause you some concern. I think there might even be a nest of ants on this tree, because I see a few holes on the side of the tree that the ants are emerging from and then going back into. These ants are often having what we call a mutual relationship with the tree. Because I said they can sting or spray a type of a formic acid, which is very uncomfortable for mammals. So what happens is the tree is providing them with shelter by having hollow sections. Now, the tree is not doing that on purpose, so it's kind of like by accident that happens. But if a giraffe would come now and try and nibble on the branches here close to where these ants are, the ants will rise up because the mammal is disturbing them. And when they do that, they will start stinging and spraying this formic acid onto the exposed flesh of the giraffe, like maybe into its nostrils, around its eyes, and the giraffe will leave because it's very uncomfortable. So the tree gets a type of a protection. And many birds will also take advantage of these ants. Many birds will create their nests really close to the ants. The bird is small enough not to disturb the ants, and they don't eat the ants. And in return, when a large animal comes to maybe try and disturb the bird itself or the nest, eat their eggs, these ants will provide the protection. How awesome is that? Catherine, me too! Creepy little tiny insects and bugs are fascinating. These little creepy crawlies. As I said, we will love to go into the undergrowth and see what's happening. Not always just looking at... I did my time on Big 5 safaris and it was always phenomenal. But lately I've become fascinated with... Oh, hold on. There's an ant over here that has got an aphid. I'm trying to see if I can show you it. I don't think you'll be able to see it from where you are, BK, but just let me get a piece of grass. I don't know. I can't see it clearly because I don't have magnifying glass with me, but I'll point it out to you. Just over here, BK, on this side of the branch, there is something... Oh no, I touched it and it moved away. Oh, I'm so sorry, ant. Oh no. Okay, so this ant, there's one ant here, just on the edge of the branch here, who had a little insect that was next to it. I think it was actually an aphid, and then I just moved my little pointer stick a bit too close, and that little aphid moved, or whatever insect that was moved. Now the ant's looking for it. Do you see what it's doing? It's using those antennae. It's not easy to see, but they're using their antennae to try and taste or find out where the good stuff is. Wow, absolutely fascinating. And I'm glad you're all enjoying it. Let's see what else we can find.
So as we've been bumbling, I've noticed the sky and the clouds, and actually quite like how they're moving through the sky. So let's just sit and watch the clouds as they move through the sky this morning.
Welcome back to my bumble looking for the Talamati Pride. So I've covered most of the southern boundary. There were no tracks crossing out there. And none a little bit further west. So I think the Talamati Pride is somewhere still in the middle of the block. So I'm actually going towards the next 3 roads that would kind of cut that block up into segments. Just looking for where they might have gone. The sun has come out a little bit, which is wonderful. It's warming up. So I'm hoping that means that the lions might be settling down. We might be able to catch up with them. Nice thing is when you've got so many lions moving, it's very difficult to miss their tracks because they do make quite the impression, whether it's on the road or the grass even. You can often see exactly where they've walked in the grass. A place like a riverbed is really an excellent place to look, because this is where lions might rest. Right, so where I was with Shasha and the Talamatis moving off was actually just up on my left now. So they were coming down this way. So I want to check along these 2 roads. I'm actually going to do a loop and just see, because this is the area that I think they've gone to. Alan, yes, lions can actually catch diseases from eating other animals, particularly things like bovine tuberculosis, bovine TB, which is probably the biggest concern in lion populations in terms of infectious diseases. And that would come from eating buffaloes in particular. So it's just like our TB, it sits in the lungs. And if they can catch that bovine TB from eating an infected buffalo, they will get TB, and it can really affect their life. A lot of lions die like that because it affects your lungs and your breathing. So that's probably the biggest concern of all of the infectious diseases that they can catch. So often why you'll see there's a controlled way that buffaloes are allowed to move from property to property in terms of actually relocating them. There's a massive drive to have TB-free buffaloes. So there's quite a process if you want to move buffaloes from one reserve to another, actually relocate them. And they're very strict on movements between the provinces in particular. The sun is disappearing again. We're just having glimpses of it. The cloud cover is so thick today, and I think there's a massive storm building more to our kind of southwest. so behind me that way. And I think when it hits, hopefully it hits around lunchtime, I think we're going to have quite a bit of rain, and then it's going to disappear again before this afternoon. So while I carry on looking for any tracks of the Talamati Pride, I'm going to send you over to Amy. Let's see what she's up to.
Well, we have made it down to the river. We actually crossed over it just now and have come up to one of the roads that run along the river on the banks. So we are going to take it nice and slow and just keep our eyes open for anything that may be hiding in the thickets this morning. The sun is starting to make an appearance, which is most welcomed. Can see lots of elephant tracks in the road ahead of me here, and that's no surprise with the afternoon we had yesterday and how many elephants we saw along the river and in this area. We also have seen buffalo in this area before. Generally not those bigger herds. They're normally in the east and the western side of the reserves, but sometimes the lone bulls are, sometimes they are by themselves, but what they call the bachelor herds of buffaloes that do hang out sometimes in these thicker bushy areas along the river. Seems like a elephant took a nice long stroll along the road that we are walking. You can just imagine him walking up ahead in a straight line, going from side to side every now and again. I can even sometimes see a little bit of a drag mark from the trunk. We're also coming up to one of the smaller pans. And maybe by that pan there will be something that's drinking, or maybe even some birds. This is a really good area with some thicker vegetation that we often see some really nice birds around. So we are going to keep looking for that. Nelly, you wanted to know if there are currently any research projects on animals happening on Ngala. Ngala forms part of the Kruger National Park, so on a bigger scale in that way. I'm sure there are research projects happening. We also work with the Southern African Wildlife College, who do a lot of work with the rhinos in the area as well. So yeah, there are things happening on a bigger scale. Here we've just gotten to this pan, so we're just going to have a quick stop here and have a look around, see what birds maybe come down. It is windy, like I was saying. Oh, there's a ring-necked or a Cape turtle dove that has come down and has just flown away as expected. But this pan is really getting smaller and smaller every day. As we come past here, we see it shrinking. If you have a look at the trees around this pan, some of the bigger ones, you can just see on the thick trunks the smoothness of them, and it's a bit of darker in color, which is just from the mud. And it shows where an animal like an elephant has come, and you can imagine they came to drink, threw some mud on themselves, like we saw the other day with those two elephant bulls, and then they come up to the trees around this pan and use them as a rubbing post and scratch that mud off themselves, helping to remove any parasites that are on them. But it doesn't look like there's too much happening here in particular this morning, so we are going to continue to bumble along the road and keep our eyes open for anything else we might find along the way.
If you are a WildEarth explorer, then we are excited to announce that there is another unique prize for you to win. Sign up to be an explorer before the 16th of October 2021, and you and a friend could be heading off to an eco training ranger experience. This 2-night opportunity offers a living and learning adventure where you will combine seeing incredible nature with gaining knowledge on how animals live in the wild. You will approach dangerous game on foot, learn how to track, do some 4x4 driving, and have an exclusive opportunity to join the WildEarth team behind the scenes on the live show. After each action-packed day, you will relax around the campfire and listen to the nighttime choir of animal sounds before you drift off to sleep. WildEarth explorers, it's in your nature.
We had a very exciting start to our morning this morning. Today, it's our guided sunrise safari with Mike, and we started by looking at the moon through a telescope, which was incredible. It's been a very different drive from all the other ones, very interactive.
Your pigeal gland is something the hoopoes have in common.
Hi. This morning's drive with Mike was thoroughly enjoyable. He really engaged us, but we also did some birding, and I managed to add a few new birds onto my list. Overall, every single experience with all the competitors has been really incredible, but it's up to the judges now.
So I'm definitely feeling some drops of rain. It is coming earlier than I thought it would. I was hoping for around lunchtime, but that's all right. Nothing too serious yet. All it means is I've got some spots in my glasses and I can't really see properly. So hopefully I don't drive Morgan and I into a tree. But it sounds like they have found the Talamati Pride. They're actually just about on the boundary in the fire break. So that's where I'm headed. And actually their tracks crossed over my vehicle tracks, which means while I was looking for them, they were then coming behind me, which is quite funny. Oh, and we've got quite a lot of elephants coming in. Oh, we've got a whole herd here. That's amazing. Alright, there's a little baby. Let's see if we can get this nicely for you. There we go. So we've actually got quite a big female in the road in front of me. And the herd is scattered on both sides. It seems like there's at least 6 or 7 here, all scattered throughout the bush. So these elephants don't seem concerned at all that there are lions close by, just like the elephants earlier. They're just carrying on with feeding, moving around. And in fact, I think the most noise that we've got here is the Birchall starlings and some fork-tailed drongos. And a tiny baby elephant chasing them. So that little calf is getting very upset with the birds. You can imagine why. Definitely still at the age of trying to work out how big you are. You can see the herd is quite scattered, and on the right here we actually have 2 feeding off of a termite mound.
I'm leaving one station with his in charge basically to move us. The could be a fire break just this side of Leopard Road. Yeah, you can see rest it's very close to the fabric.
Well, look how it's stretching up to get all the best leaves off of that poor jackleberry tree.
Okay, if you're in the Katan, just take the fire break and so as soon as you can cross the finish line, you can go fire break and see rest at the other point.
Yeah, there's a lot of noises from the elephants feeding and the starlings all around. Definitely, just gave it a little push there. Definitely an elephants and predators kind of day today with this weather. You can imagine being so big and getting so hot in the heat. These elephants must be loving this breeze and the overcast weather. You can see a little bit of the storm clouds that are building there. The majority of the clouds, though, are actually, the dark clouds are actually behind us. So I wouldn't be surprised as it kind of starts getting more towards the time where it starts properly raining. Just behind those elephants is a drainage line. Maybe they'll go down there. Once they've gotten a little bit wet, they might go down into the drainage line. can imagine these elephants have to eat quite a lot of that dry grass as compared to some of the leaves like the jackalberry tree. Lakisha, the elephants would not be able to go very long without water, so you'd probably find they come down to drink at least once a day. Because they are so big and they've got to be constantly eating, they've got a very, very high input of food, and that needs to be digested, and the best way to get digestion moving is to drink water. And so the elephants would have to drink water every single day. I have heard of elephants that have walked for days to find water. It is possible, but preferably they would like to go to a water hole at least once a day and find water. Every chance an elephant gets to drink water, you'll probably find that it will, unless it is incredibly dirty water, in which case they'll actually avoid it and go and find some cleaner water if they have to. The Birchall starlings are very noisy today. And just like the fork-tailed drongos, they are hoping that there are going to be some insects flushed up by these elephants while they're feeding. Let me see if I can find the little calf for you again now that these two are moving off. There is even a lilac-breasted roller that's taken up a position with the drongos and the starlings. It's just flown off. Alright, so the little one definitely looks like it's hiding, but that's alright. I'll get a nice view of them from here for you. There we go. There you can see some more of those storm clouds in the background. Incredibly dark. Right, and there's that little calf right at the back, in the middle. I'd be very interested to know if these elephants are part of a bigger herd that's maybe split through the dry season, and if they'll come back together again in the summer, because that's often what breeding herd of elephants do. When the resources start becoming a little bit more scarce, you'll find they split up so that there's more water and food available, and then they'll often meet up again in the summer when there's a lot of water after the rains. You'll find them meeting up at watering holes and coming back together for a while. This female isn't particularly big in size, but she looks like she might be old just from the way that her structure is compared to that other bigger female at the back. Her skin looks like it's hanging a little bit more and a bit more hollow around the head. But I think I'm going to leave these elephants and head on towards the Talamati Pride. Hopefully I can find them for you, and we'll see what happens there.
Well, Tessa, I hope that you find those lions. It is looking very gloomy here all of a sudden on Ngala. And I'm not sure what the weather's going to hold for us today, but we are going to take a turn to the left very soon and start heading away from these dark clouds. We do not want to be caught out in the rain. just feel the sense in the air that there's a shift in the weather. I mean, it started off this morning actually quite clear in the sky when we first headed out at 5:30, and then as the morning's gone on, the clouds have sort of thickened and built up, and I can just start to feel a little bit, some few drops. So we're gonna turn left here definitely and start making our way away from these clouds. It also makes sense as to why it's so windy. Definitely blowing in a little bit of a, well, I wouldn't say a storm just yet, but some rain anyway. Amazing how the sun was coming out just a few minutes ago, and now I'm holding on to my hat. I'm on my bumble back towards where the Talamati Pride is currently lying down. Very interestingly, this is the same road that I checked earlier, and they actually came on top of my vehicle track, so that would mean that they were here just after I was. They must have still been ambling along in the bush on the right. It is definitely starting to spit a little bit. I'm feeling a few drops. So I'm hoping that we can get to have a good sighting before I have to put the roof on. Can you feel it, Morgan? Telling you, rainy days are always good for predators. Popping up now with the weather that we've had in the last week. A little bit of rain here and there and cooler days, and all of a sudden you can see all the trees are really starting to pop with green. Storm definitely looks like it's making its way towards us. I'll actually stop and show you now. Shantae, that's quite a difficult question. How many kilometers do I think I travel? I think it depends drive to drive. So on a day like yesterday where everything was very close together, I probably only traveled a maximum of 8 or 10 kilometers. On a day like today when you're checking all the different roads and
really trying to find the tracks and moving around, then you would have quite a different mileage that you would go through. But I'd say the maximum, when I was at Ngala, the maximum you would travel in a day was probably closer to 50 kilometers. Here, maybe 20, 25 is a maximum, depending how far you have to move. But what I wanted to show you here is actually just how dark those clouds are in the background. So where the lines are is just off into that direction, but you can see the rain that's coming is, I think, going to be fairly decent. I don't think it's as much as we need, but it won't be so much that it's unpleasant, which is good. But we are feeling the first few drops of it coming in, and you can see it is moving quite steadily towards us, getting darker and darker. So it will be very interesting to see what happens as the day goes on and what time the rain actually really hits us. It's quite a beautiful weather situation for the lions, at least. They don't have to worry too much about moving or staying out of the sun. I think the most shelter they'd be looking for today is maybe just staying out of the wind a little bit for now, and then when it rains later they might go into a drainage line for some shelter. So what I'm also doing at the moment is just kind of looking out and listening out in case there is anything else in this area just before I get to the lions. Alright, so while I head off to go and find those lions, let's head over to Amy and see what she's getting up to on that side.
Well, the weather is also looking very ominous here. We have made our way, well, we turned around, basically took a bit of a loop just to make sure that we're heading away from those dark clouds and not towards them. So it's looking quite bright up ahead now, but if we were to turn around, you would see very similar to what Tessa was looking at. Very dark clouds as we drove south and drove the road that is adjacent to that link back to where we are now. There was even some drizzle on my face, so we quickly made the decision to sort of head back in the direction of the central areas of the reserve, trying to get away from any potential rain that could be coming. Hopefully we've outdriven it for now. It's not that cold, I must say. It's definitely relatively warm compared to how cold it can get. Only we have one jacket on. But we're always hopeful that there'll be something that we can find. Well, we've actually just found a small herd of impala, and with so little out here this morning, let's stop and have a look at them. Sharon, you wanted to know if I've had any scary encounters on drive. Yes, I have. It had to do with an elephant that I encountered. I was driving with one of the other rangers here, Barry, and he was up on the tracker seat and I was driving, and we were just doing a little bit of a bumble together, And as we were going along one of the roads called Ventus Road, here at andBeyond in Ngala, I came around a corner and there was a huge elephant bull in front of me, and definitely in must. We could smell it and see it. And as the elephant saw me, we saw it from it was about 50 meters away, and I said, oh, let's start reversing this elephant, you know. Have to be careful. As I started the car and tried to get some extra distance between us and the elephant, it started to move on the road towards us. And then I was like, okay, now we've got to start reversing. So put my head out the side of the vehicle, stuck to the line on the side of the road, and as I started going, he was like, okay, he's starting to come a little bit faster now. And I was like, okay, here we go, and did a reverse of probably 100, 200 meters or 180 yards or so, and just went for it. And he's like, okay, he's picking up the pace, and obviously I didn't see him running towards us, but could tell in the sound of Barry's voice that it was coming quickly. And anyway, so we carried on going, and he was like, okay, he's slowing down. So I was like, I'm going to carry on. And eventually he stopped and turned around and carried on in the opposite direction. And I carried on reversing all the way to the end of the road. I stopped, and it was a moment I'll never forget, with my heart beating in my chest very fast. But it was all fine in the end, and there was no problem at all. That elephant just wanted us to move, and that we did. But so lovely to see this small herd of impala not really running away from us, which is wonderful, because lots of the animals we have found today have very quickly made their way. Look, I mean, they are moving away from us slowly, but at least they're in the open area. You just notice how these animals, you see how they sort of closely group together, often what we see in the evening time, and usually by this time in the day they sort of spread out a little bit more. But because of the wind, because of the cooler weather, and because they're feeling a little bit nervous, they tend to stand closer together like we're seeing now, and it makes them feel a little bit more safe as a herd. You can also notice that their coats are quite furry and fluffy, some of them. Not that usual shiny coat that we're used to seeing in the brilliant sunshine, and that's just because those impalas are actually sticking up their hairs. Yeah, that male there you can see quite nicely, and trying to trap as much warm air in as possible. Birds do it as well when they fluff out their feathers like that and try and keep the warm air in. Just shows it is a little bit cooler this morning still. Hasn't quite warmed up enough just yet. But a lovely scene here with these open plains and these impalas just feeding, starting off their morning. And even though the weather isn't ideal, it's still lovely to be out here. So I think we may leave these impala to continue doing their thing, and we're going to head up on this road back towards more of the central parts of Ngala and hopefully stay away from the rain.
Scrapier collected a dry grass, put it next to the water hole as the hippo walks down during the warm of the day to drink the water. When the hippo arrives, he saw quite a very nice grass, an area not to resist to rest. And when the hippo went down to drink the water, and when he finished the water, he just lied down on the grass. And then, that was the opportunity of the scrappy. You know what? Today is my day to pay the revenge.
I've seen something I've never seen here before. Look at these cubs. One is crossing the river. It's being washed away, unfortunately, but I'm sure the mother is going to save her. Look at that. How beautiful. Look at that. One crossing, two to go.
A beautiful, blushing, pinkish grass that we are busy sheltering in from the wind. It's not really working, I'm not going to lie to you. The wind is still absolutely pounding us, and it's a little bit rainy also. But this grass caught my eye because of that beautiful color. It's busy slapping BK in the face. It caught my eye because of this beautiful color, and it strikes me as something that would catch most people's eyes, so I thought I'd talk about it briefly. Many of you might know this is known as red grass. Pretty simple and straightforward name for a beautiful grass. It's one of the most palatable, or can be one of the most palatable of all the grasses, where it grows in good soil. We're in a patch of it which is growing quite thickly and densely, and it has not been fed on by many animals. So I suspect that this is not a particularly good patch of soil, so the grass itself might not be that palatable. The scientific name is Phinda triandra, and this grass grows all over the world, wherever there are what we call savannas, I suppose. This grass can be found. In fact, I know in Australia, I used to live there, and they have lots of this grass, but there they call it kangaroo grass. And now it's easy to identify because when it becomes dry like this, or even sometimes when it's growing, it has a reddish color. Oftentimes, the red is referring to the tops of the grasses. These are called inflorescence. And the inflorescences are often a pinky reddish color, but when it dries, it can often also be red in color, the dry grass itself, which creates a wonderful camouflage for many animals, where it creates thickets like this. Lions will often lie in it and be hidden. Leopards can shelter in this beautifully. And it's normally heavily browsed by, or grazed rather, by buffaloes and any animals that like it. But this patch is not, in fact, there's buffalo dung right there, see? Buffalo probably did come here at some point. This is very dry, but it looks like a buffalo was here at some point. Janet, there's heaps of different grasses. Now, at the moment, at this time of year, it's difficult to identify them, but there is one just over here, which I could still identify, and I'll show it to you. So where red grass can be palatable sometimes, this grass, which is growing amongst this bush here, is called buffalo grass, and I'll just pluck the dried inflorescence of this one. It might be difficult to see, but I'll hold it up against my dark fleece, so you can see how this one grows a little bit like a Christmas tree shape, but very open. This is called buffalo grass, and it almost always grows in sheltered environments, and it is always highly nutritious. So animals smash this grass like it's going out of fashion. Right now it's very dry, so nothing's eating it. But Janet, this is buffalo grass. I think that's Panicum maximum is the name, and it's one of the ones that we also have to teach the students. The students should know what this grass is. And the palatability, Janet, of grass depends on how much leaf material they can produce. So, for example, the stalks, which I was talking about now, that's not tasty. A stalk is not a tasty thing. That's not what animals want. Animals want this stuff here. That's a leaf. So when it's nice and green, this is the thing which animals want to eat, the one that has all the nutrients. I just stuck myself with a thorn. There. Ouchie. that is the thorn from a buffalo thorn, which is right here. I did not even see it. I'm glad I did not grab a handful of it. That would have been unpleasant. Let me just remove that. You should never remove an impaled object. For one of the first rules of first aid. So I've just broken that rule. Hopefully I'm not going to have any serious side effects. Janet, what other grasses can I find? It's difficult to see because everything looks the same at this time of year when it's so dry like this. But I'll definitely show you some blue seed grass if I find some. That's my favorite grass, and I want you to remember that. I will be having a test on that later. I'm going to go over this side here, BK. So for those of you who want, there'll be grass quiz with Mike at some point soon. Okay, so I can't find anything that looks particularly eye-catching at this time, but I'll point out some to you soon. But Tessa's got something using grass for camouflage. Let's go and check it out.
All right, so I'm sitting with the Talamati Pride. It looks like it's the 8 that we had yesterday, some of the females and sub-adults. And right at the back you can just see a little smidgen of dark mane lying off on his own. And they are absolutely using the grass as camouflage today, Mike. I don't think it would have even been possible to see them from the road. They were actually up on a little ridge close to a drainage line. And I think they must have been on the move to be spotted, because now that they are flat, it is very difficult to see them. So they've chosen a really prime spot here today. You can see most are flat resting. There are 2 with their heads up, both sub-adults. And they've got a drainage line to disappear into just now if it starts raining. But for now, they can just relax in the wind. You can see she's quite intent on cleaning in between. She looks like she's cleaning in between her pads of her feet. You'll probably find she's had some thorns and things that have made their way into the hair in between all of her toe pads that get stuck there, and so she really wants to make sure she cleans all of those out. Yeah, she does look like she's trying to get something out that's stuck. You'll probably find once she's got whatever it is out, whether it's a paper thorn or even just a twig that's got entangled in the long hairs between her toes, she might actually use that same paw just now to clean her face now that it's nice and wet. Big yawn. She actually probably one of the only slightly older ones that's got her head up. You can see her nose is completely black. She looks like she's got quite a build-up of scars around her neck. She is quite beautiful. You can actually see every time she looks like that. Have a look. There you go, at her teeth. So teeth and noses are a really good indicator on lions in particular of how old a lion or lioness might be. And her teeth are very, very yellow. And her nose is very dark. That combined with a lot of scarring, she might just be a small lioness that's quite a bit older. She's licking and she's not quite happy with what's sticking to her tongue. Well, we might have a greeting here. Oh, no. Quite unusual for a lion to walk past another one and not greet them. Don't know where she's deciding to go. Maybe just going to settle under the trees here. Right, now you can see that she's moving. The rest of them have actually looked up. We've got the attention of some of the other Pride members. Sub-adult male still looks very sleepy. Right, so you might find now that she's moved because she is one of the older lionesses. The rest of the Pride might slowly get up and start following. And dark mane will bring up the rear. So she is definitely moving off. She's actually not settling down, and so I think we might see the rest of the lions get up and move too. Now, yes, these lions have amazing camouflage. I think all of them except dark mane are very well camouflaged, but he has got such a big black beard that you can see it quite clearly in the grass. But it's amazing how all of these predators are so well adapted to having camouflage, especially for the dry times like this. They're the same color as the grass. You can see now, one by one, they're all slowly waking up and moving off again. Time for a grooming session first, though. Must be incredibly tough for lions to reach some of those more difficult spots, you know, under the arms, behind the shoulder blades. They often look quite strange. They get themselves into some awkward positions trying to clean themselves. Now we can definitely see some more movement, yawning, grooming, all the classic signs that a lion is about to get up and move. Even dark mane is grooming himself. And because the grass is so dry, it's quite a clear sound when the lions are moving. It's a very dry, crunchy sound. This lioness has seen something that she's not so sure of. I don't know if she's just noticed dark mane is there. Or maybe she woke up and wasn't quite sure why everybody was moving. She might just feel a little bit nervous. Mark, where we left Shasha was a little bit further north and still moving further northwest from there. So in overall distance, I would say, with a decent guess, probably 3-4 kilometers from here. So the lions have moved quite far. I'd say, yeah, closer to 3 kilometers, almost directly north of where we are. So if I drew a straight line from where the lions are all the way up on the map, I would say Shasha's about 3 kilometers from here. So the lions have actually moved quite far, and that's quite unusual for this time of the day, but luckily, you know, we have got this beautiful weather where they can move without getting too overheated. So it seems like it's only the sub-adult male and dark mane who are still sitting here. There's one lioness that's also struggling behind, but actually the rest haven't moved off too far. They've kind of just gone behind me and settled down again. Oh, there he's up. Having a stretch. And a groom. So for dark mane in particular, these kinds of movements would be the ones where you might notice his limp. After lying down, any old injuries can kind of tighten up a little bit or get a little bit painful. So it'll be interesting to see when he's walking over if you can actually pick up the limp. Because when he's moving fast, you certainly don't notice it. Oh, look at those eyes. Yeah, you can see it. Just slightly favoring the one paw. He's actually sniffing there where one of the other lionesses was lying. Just picking up some information from them. And I think he's just going to go over and join the rest of the pride. Alright, so I'm going to try and get us around to the other side where the lions are now all lying down. But in the meantime, I'll just let dark mane finish moving.
We've got a really cool tree here. I know we're doing lots of trees, but it's really cool. It's worth knowing about it. This tree, with its interesting leaf structure, is called a weeping boer bean. And it is the only tree that I know of in the Lowveld. I'm going to get my pen out so we can point something out. That has this particular structure of 2 leaflets on the end. This is one whole leaf, and these are called leaflets. So it's got 2 leaflets on the end, which makes it a parapinnate structure. And then it's got this central vein here is winged. I'm going to turn it over slightly so you can see. You see how it's got that sharp edge there? It's not easy to see, but the edge of this is sharp. BK, a little time to get in there. Now you can see it maybe a little bit. So there you can see it's got an edge. So it's the only tree that I know of that's got a parapinnate structure with this winged midrib, this edge here that's quite nice and sharp. And that is a weeping boer bean, okay? And it has always to grow on a riverbank or on a termite mound or an area where the soil is more nutritious. And it usually never grows up straight and tall. It's got quite a twisted and sort of bent trunk. But it's really cool. It has so many uses, one use of which is another coffee substitute. The beans from this tree can be ground up and used as a coffee substitute. Oh, look, I found something equally interesting. Look, there's a little ant in there. It's not easy to see. This is one of the sugar ants. This particular one is not... Oh,
it moved quick, yeah?
Oh, it moved. Oh, there's another one, another big one over there, BK. Just walking on the edge of this tree here, on this branch. These are sugar ants. These are the spiny sugar ants. So I've never tried one, but people tell me they taste like sugary lemon sweets, and that's because of some of the chemicals in their body. But what a cool little insect. And these are solitary ants, very unusual, right? They occur in groups, obviously at a nest site, but they go out and forage singly. And these are not hunting ants. They are just looking for nectar and sweet, delicious things. Maybe that's why apparently they taste so sugary with a cool little ant. I'm sure he must be off air by now. I'm sure of it. This looks like a tree I could climb. But I won't.
Well, we are still bumbling about here at Ngala, and so far no luck, but we are still hoping that we're going to find something. It's always nice to be out anyway, so we're happy to just be out in the bush this morning. Seems like those dark clouds are staying where they were and not coming any closer. Just having a look behind, but we are still driving away from them in the northeasterly direction, just making sure that we try and keep away from those very dark clouds. There's a little pan coming up that's still holding a little bit of rainwater from the summer, so I just want to go past there as well and see if there's anything around. Just coming up here on the right. It doesn't look like anything is happening here. There's a blacksmith lapwing and 2 Egyptian goose, which are here. Lovely to see. It's actually, I think, standing on one leg, that lapwing. Trying to keep the other leg nice and warm up under its feathers. Oh, now you can see both legs are out. heads bopping up and down. Just follow this little guy around and see what he gets up to here at the pan. I think we're gonna just carry on for a little bit watching this blacksmith lapwing, see if anything else does come down. Otherwise we are gonna carry on buffling.
It's day one of the annual South African Guide of the Year competition, and our first foot into this competition this morning is all about tracks and signs.
We're going to call you in one at a time. Just look at it, the information will be there.
Our 5 guides have been tasked by the judges at figuring out who is what is who, and where they go in the bush.
Either Franklin or guinea fowl, but because of the volume of other deposits in the area, we went with guinea fowl.
Detailing the surrounding that you need to look out for tracks. The details is very important.
You are cheeky. That was a brave decision. Amber Eyes is... Oh. That is so magic. That was absolutely wonderful. Amber Eyes just gave that cub an enormous hug.
Expect the unexpected here on WildEarth daily.
I love being a cam op for WildEarth. The animals coming right up close to you, especially like lions. Sometimes you get nervous, but you have to go with the flow. My favorite animal to film is the elephant because of how big it is. But when it's really up close to you, it's one animal that you would say, I really respect you.
Alright, so the Talamati Pride has moved off towards the boundary and they're actually going to cross out of Djuma. So I thought I'm going to take a little bumble back around to the boundary and just see what else we bump into along the way as they move through and out of that drainage line. You can see this is an old buffalo skull and it's been eaten quite extensively. It's quite hard to tell actually whether this is male or female. If you look at it, it's a little confusing purely because males have that closed boss section right in the middle where this gap is that you can see, so that would indicate that it's a female. The horns are also quite thin, but what is interesting is that if you have a look on that left horn as it's coming down from the boss, there's a lot of red on it, and that's from a buffalo rubbing its horns against a tree. It's not unheard of for females to do this, but it's most likely that a male would actually do that, and you can actually see how the horn is completely worn down and it's bright red with the inner bark layer of a tree. I would definitely, from the size, still kind of hedge my bets at a female, although it is quite unusual for horns to be worn down that much in a female. You can see it's definitely been eaten and chewed up by the hyenas, and just interesting to see, you know, coming from a lion sighting, going to a buffalo skull, a little circle of life in, you know, 50 meters of each other. Absolutely incredible. So we have definitely got the weather picking up quite quickly here. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to start bumbling back towards camp before the rain hits me. Quite a special morning though, I'd say. Meeting a new leopard. Catching up with the Talamatis with dark mane for the first time in a while. I definitely think it's been an adventurous morning all round. We've got different water holes and Talamatis, dark mane, shasha, all the elephants. Everything has been absolutely incredible this morning, and I'm so happy that we all got to share it with you, because it's very, very special to see everything, especially on days like today when it is a bit cooler and things are moving around. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us this morning. I really hope that we see you this afternoon. I think it's going to be another adventure-filled drive and time. We really can't wait to see what we find you this afternoon. In terms of, I think, a morning, I don't think we could have asked for better than what we got this morning. So, yeah, I think it's going to be great this afternoon. Thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate it. And I cannot wait to see what we find together this afternoon. I'm hoping for another leopard. I still have 23 to go. And I'm sure Amy is going to be looking for some cats as well. So I'm quite excited to see what we end up with. Hopefully the rain comes over lunchtime.